Hello and welcome back. Just wanted to show you guys kind of what a filled in and completed character sheet looks like. Now, I know up to this point, you guys have kind of figured out what kind of character you want to build, and you got your background and your starting equipment, and your backstory is kind of written up or filled in. So, I wanted to let you guys have a chance to compare your completed character sheet against one that I've built. And I went ahead and even used the stats that we rolled up earlier in the previous videos. So, as an example, I created a level 1 wizard whose name is Ed Zample. Now, Ed Zample is a forest gnome, and his background is guild artisan. And I'll kind of get into why I chose that background here in a moment. But as you can see, here are his stats. I made sure that his highest stat was intelligence because that's what wizards use to cast their spells. Um, Depending on which class you use, one of these stats is going to want to be bigger than the other. And if you look over here, I went ahead and added what each of these skills is compared to their stat that they relate to. Um, this is something that's optional. I did it because it helps me remember which goes to which. Now, when you're calculating your skill checks, you'll use your proficiency bonus and add it to whatever this base number is here. Now, I believe it's chapter 1 of the PHB tells you what each of these numbers means and how much of a bonus they give you. So anything between 10 and 11, that's 0. Anything lower than 10 will be a negative number. If you have a 9 or an 8, this will be a negative 1 as opposed to a 0. 10 or 11 will be 0. So 14 and 15 is plus 2. 16, 17 is plus 3. And then I believe 18, 19, and 20 is plus 4. I'd have to double check. But depending on your rolls, you probably won't have this. Now, the reason you'll see a 16 here instead of a 14, if you guys remember, I rolled 2 14s, is because my character, my class that I picked, or my race rather, gives me a plus 2 to my intelligence. So I had a 14, 15, 16, which gives me a total of plus 3. So this is what it'll look like when you're calculating out your skill checks. Your passive wisdom as well will be calculated based off of your wisdom. So here's kind of what I filled in for stats. Moving over here, I added some personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws that our wizard Ed Zample has. So I kind of pictured Ed as a simple guy who really was not trying to become an adventurer, but has so anyway. He's pretty plain and slow talking, and he's not very eloquent in his speech. Those are some things that I wanted him to have as a personality trait. Um, you know, One of his main ideals is just to blend in. He doesn't like to cause trouble a whole lot, which as an adventurer tends to happen. So kind of um, an oxymoron there. So he has a hamster named Hammy, and that is one of his bonds. Now, as a forest gnome, I can talk to small animals, so I'm keeping Hammy around as a pet. And this is something that you want to talk to your dungeon master about. Some dungeon masters don't really like it when characters have pets. Typically, I found as long as you're not using the pet in combat or to, kind of mess around with things, they'll let you have them. And then, let's see here. For his flaws, I put he's kind of complacent and doesn't really want to intervene, even if people are in danger. So he doesn't like to get up in the middle of things. If you look here, I've added some features and traits from my race as well as my class. So as a gnome, I get gnome cunning, I get speak with small beasts, and then for my classes, I have spell casting through a spell book. I get arcane recovery, and my background includes the Guild of Cooks and Bakers. That's part of the artisan background. As part of the artisan background, I got quite a few gold pieces, and wizards actually start off with the highest amount of gold out of any class in the game. And so you essentially roll a d4 and you multiply it by 10, and it gives you how much gold. So I ended up with this total. And then here you have your other proficiencies in different languages. So, Common, Gnomish, and then Dwarvish is a language that I picked through my background. Typically, each background you pick will give you a proficiency in another language. Gnomes get dark vision, and then as a wizard, I'm proficient with daggers, darts, slings, quarterstaffs, and light crossbows. And then as tools, I have cooking utensils. So I'm going to go ahead and change our page here and let you guys look at what I filled in for background information. So again, you can put your character name up here. I went ahead and he's about 350 years old. Gnomes can get pretty old. And it depends on which race, kind of what the average age is. And again, they give you numbers you can roll for this at random if you can't think of a number. He's pretty plain looking. He weighs only about 40 pounds. White skin, brown eyes, brown hair. Think about the most plain person you could ever picture, and that's kind of how I wanted my character to be. And again, I kind of went through and described his appearance here, and I gave him a pretty short backstory. And this is something that you guys should have kind of thought of already. You can put as much effort or as little effort into this as you want, but I know dungeon masters will like it if you have kind of a fleshed out backstory that they can kind of mess with. So to include your character in part of the story, the dungeon master might want your backstory so they can, kind of bring it back up when you guys are playing. So, Ed's always just been, a simple person. He doesn't really want to adventure, but one of his childhood friends kind of drug him outside and got him adventuring. And so he left behind his job as an accountant at his hometown's local treasury. And the reason he is a wizard is because, well, he picked up his, spell book from his father. His father owned a green dragon scale spell book, which is like the only thing of color on him. He usually wears pretty drab robes. So if you look here, you have your additional features and traits. When I rolled up my backstory, when I picked my background, they give you a list of different traits that you can roll for. So traits, ideals, and flaws. So I went ahead and rolled randomly and just added them here. And then up here for allies and organizations, since I'm a guild artisan, I'm part of the guild of cooks and bakers. So I have to pay them 5 gold pieces a month, but they give me support and influence in anywhere there's a guild that's present. So that's something you'll have to talk with your dungeon master about exactly how that comes up and what that means to each individual game. But I wrote it down regardless. So since our friend Ed here is a wizard, he can cast spells. His spellcasting ability is his intelligence, like I mentioned earlier. I went ahead and used the calculations that are found in the wizard class section. So his spell save DC is 13, and he gets a +5 to spell attacks. He doesn't really have a lot in terms of attacking spells. A lot of his spells are just kind of magic you can mess around with people with. So minor illusion, prestidigitation, message, and mage hand. These are all cantrips. They don't cost any spell slots to cast, and you can cast them pretty much whenever you want. And then he has magic missile because of course he does, and then identify, which helps identify magic objects. So this is pretty much a basic level 1 character. Luckily, there's not a whole lot that they have going on. What I do want to do real quick is grab you guys an example of a high-level character just so you have something to compare it against. So give me just a moment. I'll go ahead and grab that. All right, so I just couldn't find one of mine, so I grabbed the character that my wife plays as. This is Sithel, and you can see she's a level 14 bard, and she's a changeling. Changeling is a race that is not present in the player's handbook. There's different supplemental books that you can get that add new things, but you can see her numbers are a lot higher as she's leveled up, and then she has a lot more proficiencies. Bards get a ton of these, and then there's even other things you can do to have more. So you can see she has a plus 16 to her performance and persuasion. So as you level your character up, you'll get some more of these things. You can see she doesn't have necessarily personality traits, ideals, or bonds written in. This is an updated character sheet, and she already knows pretty well what all of these things are for her character. And if you can intrinsically remember these things, more power to you. You don't have to write them down. It is good practice just to do that for a level 1 character, especially if you're starting off brand new to the whole D&D thing. It can really help you remember what kind of character you're playing. And it is completely okay for your character to change over time. That's actually expected. So appreciate you guys taking the time to fill out a level 1 character sheet. I hope you've been enjoying it. Thanks.